Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, live on a Friday afternoon with a special treat because as we've seen some activity in the silver market, certainly today, we're also seeing a lot of activity in the silver mining shares market, including Fortuna Silver, which, as you can see here, is down quite a bit on the day. And I was looking at the option board earlier this morning, seeing now SLV and silver is slightly positive on the day, but Fortuna now down over 21%. And obviously, investors wondering what to do. So we're fortunate to be joined by Jorge Ganoza of Fortuna Silver. And welcome in, Jorge. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you? I know it's perhaps not the easiest day, but I really appreciate you being here to answer questions that people have along with Dave Kranzler. So great to have you here.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience, Chris and Dave.
Well, I appreciate that. And Dave, great to have you back on here. I saw this morning and I called you to figure out what was going on so that at least I have the available information to decide, okay, is it lower? And I'm going to make one trading decision versus another. To be clear, we are not offering legal licensed financial advice today, but just a discussion. Unfortunately, Dave Kranzler of Investment Research Dynamics, one of the top silver mining stock analysts in the world, joining us today. So Dave, great to have you here, sir. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think you're exaggerating my standing in the mining stock world, though.
Well, I hear that you are even chapter one of a book called The Big Silver Short, which discusses, amongst other things, why so many people turn to the silver sector. I mean, here we are in the middle of the final innings, it would seem, of a hyperinflation campaign, yet silver is below last year. Even I think it was 2 years ago in July, when silver hit 29 before hitting 29 and 30 again this February. So Dave, before we dig into Fortuna, any thoughts on what we've seen in the silver price over the past week or so?
I mean, it has a long way to go before it reflects what I think is its ultimate fundamental market value. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that it's a lot higher than it was a couple of weeks ago. And I think over the next several months, it's going to go a lot higher from here. So,
well, you would think so, especially quite a nice transitory inflation trend that broke 6% this month, setting records both on the producer level and the retail level, which makes it a challenging environment for you, Jorge. And I understand some of the shareholders in the last 2 days, okay, they're not happy, although it's a challenging environment to get silver out of the ground when you have some of the things Dave and I talk about, where a price that seems to defy all logic, I think that's coming to an end. But why don't you give us a recap of what's happened in the last couple of days, what investors should know, and then we can take it from there.
Well, we had a press release on October 25th informing the market that the expiration date for environmental permit for the San Jose mine in Mexico expired on October 23rd, which was a Saturday. So on Monday, before market, we announced that the expiration date had taken place, and we had not received any reply from the Mexican Environmental Agency, Semarnat. We initiated days before that some legal actions in anticipation of multiple scenarios. One, that the permit was delayed, and second, that for some questionable reason, the permit could be denied. So on starting October 23rd, our mine in Mexico has been operating under some protection provided by Mexican courts. And today and yesterday we reported financial results. And unfortunately, on November 10th, we received a formal notification from the Semarnat indicating that they were not renewing the environmental permit for the continued operation of the mine. The mine continues operating under the protection of the legal actions or mechanisms that we had in place, and we're looking to strengthen those. So we had, in a way, preliminary injunctions, and we're looking to pursue more permanent injunctions, while we pursue two avenues. One, have the courts decide if this denial has real grounds. And second, we continue dialogue with the authorities, right? We have not exhausted the avenue of dialogue. But it's an unfortunate situation, most unfortunate. The San Jose mine is a mine that's been operating for 10 years. We were seeking to renew the environmental permit for another 10. And the authorities are citing two issues for the denial. One is they claim that we failed to submit a certain documentation as part of the extension process for the permit. We contest that. We have clear and supported evidence that the documents they requested had been submitted starting back in 2019 to them, right? And we have records of that we have exhibited to them already. And then their second claim is that we have an outstanding evaluation for ancillary facilities that were built and not stated in the original 2009 environmental statement. No, so subsequent to the construction of the mine through the years, we have built a soccer field for workers. We have built a weather station. We have built a greenhouse for our reforestation program. We have a core shack for all the drill core, and 5 core storage facilities for all that drill core. We have a 40,000 liter fuel tank, a power transformer, ancillary facilities that the authority is claiming that that's an outstanding process that needs to be closed and regularized before they extend the mining, the environmental permit to the mine. So we find that highly questionable. And that's why we have sought legal measures to protect ourselves, because we just don't understand this, right? We just don't. Claiming that a soccer field, a weather station, and offices, bathrooms are a breach of environmental regulations and things like that is just very difficult for us to understand, and our lawyers, right? So we're contesting this. We have a period to appeal in front of the authorities administratively, and we're pursuing that avenue, and at the same time seeking protection from the courts while all of this is sorted out, right? We are a significant employer. We work, our mine is located in an economically depressed area, and we are the single largest employer in all of that region. And we employ directly 1,200 people. But indirectly, we impact closer to 6,000 women, men, children that earn a decent living and improve their quality of life through their work and relationships with this mine. No, so Fortuna has 4 operating mines. We're building the fifth one. But the Ocotlan Valley only has one mine, right? So it's hard for us to understand this attitude on the part of the environmental agency and the harm that they might be causing to people here, right? This mine has been inspected 12 times over the years by the environmental agency, and never cited for environmental pollution nor anything like that, right? We have never been fined for pollution, for environmental damage. We operate a zero discharge mine. By that I mean we don't discharge effluents into the environment. We used water from a sewage plant that we operate, and that's a very clever project and one we're very proud of. We operate a sewage plant, and we use the treated sewage from that plant to feed industrial water for our mine. And we also capture rainfall. And those are the two sources of water for our industrial process. No? So we don't consume water fresh water from the environment. We don't discharge anything. It's a zero discharge operation. And we have great support from the local town where our mine is located, no? Overwhelming support, right? So, with all that said, we are hopeful that we'll be able to find a resolution to this that makes sense to everybody.
Dave, you have a comment on that?
Just a couple follow-up questions. So Jorge, you mentioned that there's an appeal process that you're involved in right now. Is that with the Semernat? You're appealing their decision?
We have a set time frame to appeal the decision of the Semernat, and we're doing that. In parallel to that, we're pursuing a protection from the courts, right?
So, but I'm assuming the mine's allowed to operate with or without a court injunction during the appellate process?
No, we need the court injunctions.
You need the injunction.
Yes.
And what was the issue there? I guess there's an issue with the credit agreement. And I think on the earnings call, there was a November 12th date thrown, or November 20th date. Yeah, November 20th. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, or credit facility has a covenant whereby if by November 20th we do not have a permanent injunction, no, we would be in default on the facility. Right now, we don't believe that we can. It's very unlikely that we can, because of the times of the courts and everything, we can meet the November 20th deadline with a permanent injunction or something like that. So we have gone to our lenders and we're speaking with them, trying to find flexibility to deal with this, right? And I mean, so far, they are sensitive and receptive to the situation, but we still need to sort it out with them.
I just want to say, from my standpoint, I would not worry about the November 20th date. I mean, I'm sure the banks will extend it so that it runs in conjunction with your permanent court hearing and the decision period thereof. But do you have a date? Is there a date set for the hearing for the permanent injunction?
This is all evolving rapidly, right? So there are several legal actions being taken by the team, and some of them are also being taken by workers, right, on their own right. There are more legal actions being filed, and if successful, those will grant initially a preliminary injunction, followed by a permanent one if the courts agree with what we present them or the workers present the court with, right? So all of that is a process, right? I don't want to get ahead of myself. There is always a factor of risk with how, a court might rule or what sort of protection it might grant. But we believe that, based on our assessment of things and the grounds provided by Profepa Semarnat to deny the permit, we feel good that, the court should hear this and hear our case and seek to resolve it. And while they analyze this and reach a verdict and a resolution, we are hopeful we'll be granted protection, right? Now, all of this needs to be resolved in a matter of days, and it does. No, the injunctions, the permanent injunctions, is something that takes days, not weeks, right?
Dave, in a situation like that, especially as I've been learning more about the mining stocks from you, isn't the government ultimately left in the position, though, where, let alone if we have a rising silver price, just right now, if there's an asset in the ground that is now not, Fortuna and Jorge can't produce it out of the ground because that's taxable revenue. Otherwise, it just sits there. So there is some incentive. I know people, and sometimes deals do fall apart, but there is a market incentive for the government to come and find an agreement too, because like Jorge pointed out, he's creating jobs, he's paying taxes, all which things that governments campaign on advocating. So how would you look at that, Dave?
Mexico's a whole different situation now that it's got a AMLO's in power, so who knows how this could shake out. I mean, Fortuna is not the only company down there dealing with issues with the Semarnat. To me, this situation, this permit and the court proceeding situation seems pretty clear. I mean, just from my perspective, the way I look at this, I would be shocked if the courts don't issue a permanent injunction until the permit matter is resolved. One thing that I wanted to bring up here, just with regard to what's happening with the stock price right now. So Jorge, in Q3, San Jose was roughly 26% of the consolidated EBITDA economics. And I'm assuming, I know you can't give numbers, projections, but I'm assuming that in 2022, San Jose will be an even lesser percentage of the overall economics of the consolidated company as Lindero ramps up, and as the
Yaramoco mine.
And the year, yeah, exactly. You're not going to have to shut down the mine every quarter to replace the sag bearing at that mine. So, and so let's just say, for sake of argument, that in 2022, and again, I don't want to be held to these numbers, but let's just say San Jose, if it's still operating, would be 20% of the economics of the overall consolidated company. The stock price right now is down about 30% from where it was trading yesterday after you released earnings, and the stock was up 3%, and the market liked the earnings were good. They were actually better than I expected. So, and I truly do not believe the worst case would happen, but even if the worst case were to happen, the market's already discounting, an eventual shutdown of San Jose. It's more than discounting that. And then you're probably about 13 or 14 months away from Seguela startup, assuming everything goes smoothly there. And Seguela will more than replace the economics of San Jose.
Yes, Seguela is a pivotal project for the company, no? And it's about a year and a half away. And you're right. We derive our revenue from 4 operating assets, and Lindero, let me give you here an exact figure. The mine is contributing, give me a second.
There is the Lindero mine, Argentina. Dave, one of the questions I'll look for.
San Jose contributed 25% of gold equivalent production in the quarter, about 25%. Yaramoko 28, and San Jose and Lindero contributed the same. So this mine is contributing this year a quarter of gold production, and next year is going to be less. Yeah, it's going to be more like 22%, no, in the range of 20% of sales and production, right? So the more pivotal assets are the Yaramoko mine and the Lindero mine, and then of course Seguela coming into play, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that's why I think this reaction in the stock market is just totally absurd. It doesn't make any sense, because even if you remove San Jose from the equation, Seguela is going to replace it. I mean, the stock should not have had 30% of its value erased from yesterday before this became an issue with the market.
Yeah, this is a most unfortunate situation, and with Mexico, with what's happening here, and not renewing an environmental permit for a mine that has been operating for 10 years without any citation for contamination or pollution or anything like that, a clean record. Is just, we're shocked as well, as much as anybody else, and I can understand a strong market reaction. I'm not going to comment on market performance, but we are all surprised, and but again, we were alert and started in a timely manner some legal actions, hoping for the best but planning for the worst, and the worst is what happened, right? So we know the investment climate in Mexico or under this administration has been quite questionable, right? We're not the only company and not the only industry that's going through some of this grief, right?
Dave, I have a question for you. Obviously, you and I talk a lot about why we think the price is low. And of course, we have more pressure politically than ever. The budgets are strained more than ever. I might add, we have that debt ceiling coming back in 3 weeks, which again, no one's talking about. Of course, they're not solving it. They're just getting ready to threaten everyone on the planet how if you don't give them another open run at the credit card, it's a catastrophe. So with all these things building, let's say Fortuna doesn't get good news with the court ruling, but at some point we start seeing a higher silver price. I mean, we're already up a bit over the last week or two. I mean, we've seen silver get up to $28, $29 a couple times in the last 2 years. Just so people can put it in perspective, okay, let's say there's some offset from the deal, but it would be a gain. How would that compare? Would that gain be significant compared to what could potentially be shut down?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Let's say that Fortuna does not get the outcome they're hoping for from the court, but the silver price goes up to $27 or $28 and they're making additional money on each ounce of silver that's produced and sold. Does that offset what's happening with the court? Is that larger, or how?
Oh, San Jose is most of Fortuna's silver production. But if the price of silver goes up, that means the price of gold is going up. And Fortuna is now with, with the Rox Gold acquisition and with Lindero ramping up, Fortuna is becoming a major gold producer. So, my whole point is that the stock market right now is already over discounting Fortuna without San Jose. And it's not taking into account the Seguela ramp up, which that'll be, by the second half of 2023, you'll be producing 130 ounces of gold from Seguela. And that's high grade gold. And Lindero also, I noticed it did in the quarter 1.1 grams per ton, I believe, versus a run rate of 0.95. And I'm assuming that 1.1 grams per ton will be maintained next year, at least as far as you know.
The mine is produced 26,400 ounces of gold in the quarter. We did not get to sell all of that gold in the quarter, but that's what we produced. And or estimate for Q4 is higher, and then into next year, with production north of 100,000 ounces.
But with the grade that Lindero is turning out, that's cash cow grade for a gold mine, for an operation like Lindero.
Yes, it is.
And so as the price of gold rises, which I think all three of us probably agree that it will, even though Jorge can't issue a call on that, but Chris and I and the audience, obviously we believe that the price of gold is going to go substantially higher with the grades that Yaramoko and Lindero are turning out. Fortuna is a money tree with or without San Jose. If gold goes, or when gold goes over 2,000, it's going to be just gushing cash flow.
Yeah, people have to go back to the more than the headline, which is difficult, to the models, right, and do the numbers. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And Jorge, are you able to take some questions from the audience? We have a bunch of them starting to come in. Is that all right if we take a few questions from people who have questions about the situation today?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and Dave, do you have another question while I wait for a few more and pick a good one to ask Jorge? Anything else you'd like to ask first, Dave?
I just did my write-up for Fortuna for my newsletter subscribers yesterday, and that was before this, latest news hit. So I honestly can't think of any other questions. For me, just trying to flush out exactly what the issues were with the environmental permit and the court proceedings, et cetera. So, and Jorge, I think, has done an excellent job laying that out and explaining all the variables and and as much as possible, the timeframes.
All right. And Jorge, we do have a question here. Do U.S. shareholders have standing to sue in the U.S. over operations in Mexico? I'm not sure if you can answer that one. If you can, feel free to pass if needed, but any thoughts on options for shareholders on anything going on there?
I'm not sure about that. So I will not have an opinion on that. We as a company are going to use all the legal recourse that we have. And again, we still pursuing the avenue of dialogue, with the government. So those two avenues still open.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So a little bit early there. And I know both of you talked about this earlier, but just for anyone hopping on now, the National asks, when can we expect news on the situation from the government or court, or at least what is the next item that you might expect to be coming?
We will be updating the market on our discussions with the lenders. We will be updating the market on our discussions with on what happens with our legal actions, and we will be updating the market, if anything, if we have a breakthrough through the dialogue with the authorities, right?
Okay, and actually, what a treat. We have a question. Peter Spina of silverseek.com, friend of the show, fan of Dave Kranzler, and he has a question for Jorge. Peter is interested to know about Lindero's ramp up to full production levels. He believes it is targeted for Q2 next year, if you understood correctly from today's conference call. Jorge, why don't you take that one?
Yes, we had a bit of confusion in the results call on that question, and the answer there is the mine is operating within the range of design parameters. The entire operation, right? Having said that, we still have some scheduled changes over the next months and improvements, right, to the bottleneck certain areas. Now that we have the support of foreign technicians in Argentina, because Argentina remained closed up until a few weeks ago for free travel from foreigners. So it was very difficult for us to get technicians on site that would help us with some of the equipment, right? Some of those scheduled changes and whatnot will take place late this year and early into next. So that's why we believe that all of the bottlenecking will take place, over the coming months. So in the second quarter, everything should be taken care of. But having said that, what is the criteria for achieving design parameters? When you can support continued operations at a rate that's at 80% plus of design parameters, right? And all of the different equipment have been tested for performance. And every component of the systems is fit for purpose. But making everything work in sync, right, at rates of 80% plus of design capacity is what we rate as being operational. We are in that range. Our operation is performing within that range. And that's why we see production ramping up, and we had record gold production this quarter, and we expect an even better quarter that will help us meet our guideline or guidance. The Lindero ramp up has been painful, right? It has taken a year, and well, we had to ramp up on our own in the middle of a pandemic, right? And for example, a country like Australia remains largely closed, or up until recently largely closed. But a mine in Australia benefits from having all the service providers, equipment manufacturers, everything in country. Argentina is not there has a limited mining tradition, and you rely on external support on equipment. For example, Superior comes from the US. They help us with the conveyor stacking system. The HPER crusher, which is our tertiary crusher, we rely on a couple of German guys who live in Turkey. Those are the guys who support the HPER operation at Lindero. We just couldn't. So we operated the HPER crusher for a year on our own, and we never had an issue, but we couldn't really fine tune it, right? We needed those guys to fine tune the equipment. And all of those barriers have been overcome now that Argentina is open, and we're there, and that's why you see production more steady, production increasing, and we see no issues with performance of equipment, and the worker force is more used to the equipment, and we see those natural improvements and showing in the production. Gold production is higher and will continue to be higher.
All right. And Dave, we have another question in here. Maybe you could touch on this. Dominic says, could this example be an issue for other miners like First Majestic? I mean, I guess any jurisdiction, there's always some risk, but what would you say there, Dave?
I mean, I assume he's asking about specifically in Mexico. Man, I don't know. I mean, it's a case by case. It seems like it's a case by case situation. I think, Jorge, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there certain states in Mexico where the SEMARNAT doesn't have authority? And the permitting is done locally?
No, the SEMARNAT is a federal office that has a presence in every state, right? So I agree that it's on a case by case, and I also have to say that Oaxaca in southern Mexico is not very industrious. So there are only 2 mines, and outside of the windmill farms, there are only 2 other industries. There is a cement plant, and there is a beer bottling factory for Corona. So we are within the 3 largest industrial businesses in the state of Oaxaca. So we are not sheltered by the numbers, if you will. And I think that's a difference with other states in northern Mexico, like Durango, Sonora, or Pachuca, or Guanajuato, Zacatecas. Oaxaca is not necessarily a mining state. But furthermore, I mean, that's what Oaxaca needs to get people out decent employment. I mean, we work in an area where it's not like people can find a job in the vehicle assemblage plant right next door. No, we are the only source of decent employment in the entire valley, right? The only source.
Well, I appreciate that. And gentlemen, as we're getting close to wrapping up, 20 minutes left in the trading day. I will pull up the chart one more time, although one question that came in that I think echoed by many people out there, the National says, Dave, what's your advice on Fortuna to your subscribers? Also, we had, before we get to that, we did have a super chat question. So Jorge, let's get to this one real quick from Sean before. Are you at risk of bankruptcy at all in this if the San Jose mine shuts down? Will this put you in violation of covenants that will make your debt immediately due? Anything you can comment on there?
No, Fortuna is not at the risk of bankruptcy, right? What's bankruptcy? When your your current income does not support your current liabilities, right? Far from that, right? Fortuna generates, we generated $75 million in EBITDA, $30 million plus of free cash. No, by no means. We might have an issue with our debt to EBITDA ratio is 0.2. So with respect to our potential to generate cash, we have a very manageable level of debt, right? And so we are, we can certainly meet our short-term obligations, and we have a capital commitment for the construction of Séguéla. And, if anything, the construction of Séguéla can be impacted. But, it's not like we lose ability to structure debt. Is that the current structure that we have would have to be rethinked. And in case the worst happens. So, and that's why we're working with the banks. If, we get to a worst case scenario where we are not granted the permanent injunctions, or the courts decide not to take our case, or dialogue does not advance with the authorities. No, this is an evolving story, and I think we're working on every front. Mexico has a long and proud mining tradition, and we expect reason will prevail here, right?
Jorge, I appreciate that.
Can I just point out one thing? I mean, not that it's going to come to this. I don't see any reason why the bank's not going to loosen up the covenant, but I mean, essentially you have enough cash and receivables to pay off all your debt, and you're generating quite a bit of cash flow from your operations. So,
Yeah, I mean that's why I say, what's a bankruptcy is when you cannot, your short term, your current cash cannot meet your current obligations, right?
right, you can make that debt go away tomorrow if you wanted to. Not that
Yeah,
you want to or need to.
That is not Fortuna situation.
Well, Jorge, I appreciate that, especially as Dave is very familiar with, because both of us, we get frustrated as investors where we have a lot of these companies and regulators where we catch things that are inappropriate. People lose money, laws are broken, and they're never anywhere to be found. Yet here on a day, even when the investors are selling the shares, I appreciate that you come on the show, and I know a lot of people out there had the same questions, and that's certainly one of the things I look for in the company. So in wrapping up, we did have one final question here from Stig A. Says, what's the takeaway for a new investor to think about jumping on the Fortuna ship? So Jorge, any final thoughts if someone is just hopping in now and they see the prices down? Quick summation of what would be the key takeaway.
First, as we learn, mining is a difficult business. That's the first one. You need to have some stomach, and mining is a difficult business. And we have been working to diversify our production, right? So we have 4 operating mines in 4 different jurisdictions, right? We're building the 5th one. So we have geographic diversification and a good asset base of high margin mines that help us manage risks, and jurisdiction risk is an issue here. And we expect reason will prevail. We're working hard. We got a committed team on the ground, and we're supporting them. But again, I don't make stock recommendations. I can tell you the facts about the company, and I think we have hopefully painted a good picture for your audience of where we are and what challenges we face, and where the opportunity lies. This is unfortunate. And we're looking to bring this situation back under control. Right?
And Jorge, can you just mention the website link? That's Carlos Baca that people can contact, our dear friend at info@Fortuna Silver. Can you mention the website link where people can find information? So you even have auditor information. Dave, we know that's hard to get with some other participants in the silver market, but Jorge, where can they find you on the web?
Yeah, it's fortunasilver.com, right? That's our website. It's a very comprehensive website, and through Carlos, we're available anytime to talk with our investors and potential investors, right? And explain the company, right?
Well, sure appreciate that, Dave Kranzler. What would you say to someone who maybe is even new to silver, but seeing this news, how would you sum it up quickly? Any parting thoughts on the situation?
I mean, these are the type of situations that I look at as opportunities. And one of the things that I like about the mining stock sector, and particularly the junior exploration stocks, is that I think that the stock market is extremely inefficient in valuing these assets. And this is a situation here where it's just irrational in terms of what's, the percent of market cap that's been erased versus the percent of economics that San Jose represents. So, I've been in there buying adding shares and adding longer dated call options all day long, including, while we've been on this call as I watch the stock go lower. I could be wrong, but that's my conviction at this point. I think this is a fantastic opportunity to get into what is a really, really well-run company. And I fully endorse the diversification strategy that they're on. And there's a lot of assets that we didn't even talk about on the balance sheet that have upside optionality that the market doesn't even seem to care about today.
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned some great points there. Here we see a $1 billion market cap on Fortuna, which I might add, if the mine doesn't get turned back on, that's going to reduce the silver supply. So another factor pressuring the market. But just a quick note, it's amazing to me, Dave, we talked about, here's DoorDash up another 8% today, which at $83 billion, basically they just copied the website from Grubhub. These guys churned out $30 billion. Yet the guy that has some silver in the ground and knows what to do with it, looks like is on sale today. So I appreciate both of you. Jorge, I appreciate the tasks you have to go through. I apologize on the behalf of my country I was born in, the government or so-called of that, which makes it hard for people to get the key resources that are needed, which we're seeing evidenced by supply chain shortages all around the globe. And knowing how fragile the silver supply chain is for reasons that we just discussed, I think that maybe people might be wise to think about if the silver supply chain runs into issues. And fortunately, again, Jorge Ganoza from Fortuna Silver, Dave Kranzler from Investment Research Dynamics, and thank you to everyone watching at home and making this show possible. And hope you all have a great weekend and enjoy the last couple minutes of trading, and we will see you again soon.
Thanks for your time, Jorge.
Thank you, Chris, Dave. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience and share